Hi, I'm Marjorie Healy, and welcome to another episode of Behind the White Picket Fence, where life is both messy and beautiful. Today we have on Sarah Everett, who is a Montessori educator and teacher, and she is also the mother of three children, a 3-year-old daughter and 7-month-old twin boys, which is amazing that she's found an hour to speak with us today. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
That's welcome. And I think I have so many questions for you. So we'll talk about both your teaching experience, the Montessori way, and what it's like to be a mom. And you're not my first guest that has twins. I think all parents of twins can really relate and understand each other. But it's so nice to have you on when your twins are so young, because you probably have some things that you can share with our listeners that will make them feel better about motherhood, or at least not alone.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, right. We'll just dive in. Okay, so my first question to you is, how did your teaching and all of your education and, having all the experience being a Montessori educator and teacher in the classroom for years with little kids, and knowing that one day this was going to be you, or hopefully you, and here you are in it with 3 young kids of your own. How did it prepare you? What did you learn? And what did you say to yourself, okay, this is how I'm going to try to apply it in my day-to-day motherhood role?
Yeah, so I am a primary specialist. So I've taught for about going on 20 years, I guess. And I've always been drawn towards the primary grades. So for a long time, I taught kindergarten. Then in Montessori, I did kindergarten as well as 1, 2, 3. And for a little small stint when I came back after mat leave with Bailey, I taught grade 4, 5, which was a really interesting, grade 4, 5, 6, which was a really interesting twist. And then I went back to kindergarten. So I've kind of had a big range. And I will say, the struggle is very real when you have that understanding and knowledge of children and their development and their capabilities and their stretches and all of those pieces, and you see all these kids every day, every year, and all the differences. And my opinion of motherhood was very different before I became a mother. And I always told myself as a teacher, like, oh, when I'm a mom, I'm never going to let my kids watch TV. And I'd stroll into that classroom and be like, I know what I'm doing. And now that kind of attitude has really shifted, especially since having the twins. Having Bailey, I mean, she is a kind of unicorn baby. She did what I wanted her to do. She is this compassionate, kind, caring soul that just loves life. And when the boys came along, I kind of, everything that I ever told myself as a teacher, I totally went against. Bailey watches TV like nobody's business because it's the only thing I can do to cope. And so the struggle it's different. I mean, I take all that knowledge that I learned and all that expertise and filtering then into your own children and your own parenting is really, it's different. I mean, you're with these kids not just for 6 hours a day. You're with these kids all day, every day. And if you don't build in those breaks for yourself, you're with them all the time. And when I had Bailey, it was the beginning of the pandemic. And so I think by virtue of that, it was lonely. But I still can't get over the fact of like how lonely parenting is and mothering is. You have to make the decisions. You have to like stick to your guns. And I feel like the biggest struggle of having all that expertise and all that knowledge of being a teacher, and now kind of porting that into navigating my way through being a mother, is the feeling judged. I
Oh,
constantly feel judged.
right. I can relate to that a little bit too, because, I was a parent, I am a parent coach, and I have these red-headed identical twins and everyone knew who I was and what I did. And I felt often in the community under a little bit of a microscope. Like,
Mhm.
oh, how is she going to handle that? And I would feel on display and the pressure. I
Yeah.
think I do. Actually, I don't think I do. I did do this. I remember telling my kids, because I'm a very honest and also humorous mother. I think there's a big piece of motherhood that needs a sense of humor, because
Yeah.
it's so crazy that if you can't laugh at some of it, you won't survive. But we'd be in the car and we'd be getting ready to go into the local grocery store. And I would say, okay, we just need to go in and get 5 things. And remember, mommy's a parent coach. So what I need you to do is get in the line and make a train and follow me. And we're going to quickly get through it, and we're going to get out. You're going to get a balloon. We can't ride the horse because we don't have time, and get back in the car, and everyone's going to be okay.
Yeah. And like, you're doing all the right things. You're doing all the things that I would tell a parent as a teacher to do. Front load your kids, talk about it, create a list, set the expectations. Like, all of those things are happening.
Yeah.
But the second you walk out of that car and you're in the grocery store, you're like, and of course, someone's going to have a meltdown. Like, it's only natural. And you watch your kid melting down and you're like, everyone's looking at me like, you're the teacher. What are you going to do? You must have all these tools in your toolbox. Why is your kid doing this? And I, I'm sure nobody is judging me, but I just feel very judged. And it's hard. It's probably the hardest thing. Everyone told me when I found out that I was pregnant with the boys, everyone said, well, if anyone can do it, you can do it. And that's really, like, it is a compliment. And I do know where those words are coming from, and I take it as a compliment because I know no one's trying to be malicious.
No,
But at the same time, I was like, but I don't want to prove to people that I know how to do this. Like, I just
or what if I want to feel like I can't do it just for a minute?
Right. And what if I can't do it? Like, who cares that I'm a teacher and that I have all these tools and that, like, I'm good at teaching? Like, what if I'm a crap parent? Like, how do we, and I don't, it's like that, those pieces that.
It's true. And I think having all of the knowledge doesn't make you well. I mean, it gives you some information, but what if you're sleep deprived? You could have all the information in the world and then not be able to access it because you're too tired.
Absolutely.
Or, what if you have all the information in the world and you know exactly how to do it, but you get robbed of any kind of fitness that you'd like to do to keep you somewhat sane, like a pillar of your health, all those pillars of health, whether it's sleep, nutrition, fitness, hydration, connection to self, others, a spiritual connection, all of those things that keep us well, we sort of get robbed of as a parent, or those things get tested because we lose time, right? All of a sudden, it's not just about us. We're caring for all of these little human beings. But when you were a teacher, you had access to all of those things. You had access to a full night's sleep. You had access to fitness. You had access to seeing friends after work. You had access to any kind of spiritual meditation practice you might be doing, or whatever it was. You had access to probably more time to create healthy food if that was what you were, or if you had, thought about those kinds of things. There was at least time to incorporate pillars of health. But once you can have all the logical pieces, and not always access to it in the moment. Right?
For sure. And like, you only have like those precious moments to have all those other pieces. So what are the most important pieces? Is it going to see your family? Is it going to see friends? Is it going to exercise? Is it going to church, or whatever that might be, whatever that might look like? You only have certain moments where you can fulfill those needs, those other needs. And so you have to really kind of prioritize it in a weird way.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's
Challenging. I think too, and I want to know your feelings on this. There's a little bit of when they're not yours. So if these little primary kids come into your classroom, they're not your kids. So as much as you love and care and can't wait to see them flourish in the classroom, you don't have the same emotional tie to them that their parents do. So I would find if my kids misbehaved, and even though I had access to all of this information, it might trigger a fear of mine. Like
mhm,
do something and I'd be like, oh my gosh, what if they're never going to grow out of this? Or what if they're, never going to be able to figure this part of life out? And you kind of, fear often leads you to be catastrophic in your thinking. And you all of a sudden, they're just being mean to their brother. And then you wonder if they're going to be a kind human being forever. Right.
yeah,
And
right.
so that's a silly example, but it triggers a fear because you're so emotionally attached to them and their upbringing and who they are, and that doesn't exist, I don't think, in the classroom. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's so many different teachers out there and different styles and different ways of going about it. I took on a lot with my students. I took on a lot of like emotional, not baggage, but emotional parts of teaching where the social emotional piece was always a priority for me. And so how they acted as a human was like a big piece of my teaching. And
Right.
so I took a lot of it on. And
Yeah.
I took a lot of like parenting on. And so I would always email parents and I'm always giving them websites to look at and articles to read and things to consider and trying to while also trying to understand that they have a lot going on and that I'm just trying to offer support. And so it would be kind of in a um, light way.
Right.
um, but yeah, it is different with your own kids. It is definitely different.
Yeah.
I watch it with Bailey. She she has some struggles right now at her school with friends and friendships and the classic 3-year-old touching each other and pushing each other and finding your space and finding your voice and finding your personality and identity and stuff. And I I have to like remember that I'm the parent and not the teacher and like taking on
Mhm.
those different roles. So
Right.
it is different. You are much more emotionally attached to your own child and every piece of all the people that are impacting those kids and what your kid and how those pieces are all coming together to form their identity, right? So
Right.
it's like what I do and how I act is impacting Bailey. How my husband acts is impacting Bailey. How the teacher acts, how the teacher assistant acts, what all these things do, and how that forms this child's identity and comfort and love and acceptance and all those pieces. So yeah, it's hard.
Hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
Hard.
You just want to make sure it's all going to be okay. You're like, how do I protect you? And how do I make sure it all goes well? And how are you going to handle all the bumps and bruises of life? And how are you going to become resilient and know what parts to adopt as your self-identity and which parts to let go? And watching them learn that is really hard. It's
It is.
right, because every experience they have becomes part of who they are. They decide how they interpret those experiences.
Mhm.
So, as a teacher, if you put your teacher hat on for a
Yeah.
second,
Okay.
now you're both a parent and an educator, and so when you come off of mat leave and you get back in the classroom, and even before you were on mat leave, what did you want if you could offer advice or words of wisdom, let's call them, right? Because nobody has to, advice is it's like I always say, advice is like noses, everyone has one. And I personally don't like to give advice, but if we were to offer food for thought, what would you tell parents who are bringing their kids into your care, and knowing, I mean, you're amazing, and I know how much you do care about their social emotional being, and I always have said, um, I don't, they can't learn if they're not feeling socially and emotionally well in the classroom anyways. So what would you offer parents if they could help you as an educator, or if there was something they could do at home, if there was a way they could drop them off, or anything they could be doing on the outside of the classroom, what would you invite them to do?
So I think the first thing that comes to my mind, and it's probably because of the Montessori piece, is independence. The quicker you can foster that independence as a parent for your child, the easier the transition will be when they come to school. So whether that's kindergarten, preschool, whenever they start school, maybe it's grade 3, they've been homeschooled, whatever it looks like, fostering that independence is huge. And it's part of the Montessori philosophy, is that, allowing the child to figure stuff out with you kind of watching over and, intervening when you need to, or when they would like you to.
Right.
And kind of slowly showing them the way of how to pack your lunch, how to put your lunch kit in your backpack, how to make sure that you have all those things done before you leave for the day. So did you brush your teeth? Did you make your bed? Did you make your lunch? Did you have breakfast? Did you pack your water bottle? Do you have extra clothes? Do you need extra clothes? Where's your backpack? Did you put your backpack in the car? Have you gotten in the car? What do you need before you got in the car? Have you put your socks on? Do you need a jacket? All those pieces and
Right.
all that executive functioning stuff that kind of fosters that independence of getting them out the door. And I understand that getting kids out the door is like an atrocious task to begin with.
Atrocious. We could do a whole podcast on
You
how to
could.
get the child out the door.
You could.
And we should, but let I digress for a minute, but I'm coming back to that. Yes.
Yeah. And it's so, but like helping them figure that out. So, with Bailey, I have this visual schedule because I thrive on visual schedules. I bought this really cute one from some Canadian company.
Okay.
And it's a visual schedule of like what to do in the morning and what to do in the afternoon. And it has a little spot to tell me how you feel. And she
Okay.
wakes up in the morning, and it's very low expectation because she's 3.
Right.
But it's like the days that she wants to do it, she'll come up and she'll tell me what she is. So maybe she's tired, and she'll put up tired, and then she has the things that she needs to do in the morning before she gets to go to school. I definitely pack her lunch, but maybe she'll feel like in the morning that she wants to cut up her cucumber and put it in her lunch kit. And so she helps me, and she peels it and she cuts it, and we sit beside each other. Now it takes like a crazy amount of patience to do all those pieces, but for a child to understand and that they can do something on their own and to feel good about it, it's a game changer. It's hard in the moment, but the gain on it later is so huge that it makes her feel like she belongs in her house because she contributes
Right.
to being in her house. And I think for any parent out there that's trying to help them feel like they belong at home or feel like they belong in the school, which to me is very similar spaces, fostering that independence and dropping them off at the door and saying goodbye and maintaining that space. That school space is the child's space.
Right.
It's not the parent and child space. I'm sorry, it's unfortunate, but you get to come in when you're invited, and that's special, but that's their learning space. That's where they get to grow and make a friend and make an, make some learning happen. Like that is their space. So once you've done all those things to foster the independence, they will feel that much better about being dropped off and heading into the classroom.
Right. That's so, I think there's so many variations on how schools operate and what a parent's role is in a school. It's so nice to hear you say that. And I think there'll probably be some people who may argue with it. I'm not sure. But I love what you said. It's their space. It's their space to grow. It's their space to learn. It's their space to figure out what works for me, what doesn't work for me. How do I manage when my friend and I have conflict? How do I manage when I feel frustrated with my teacher, or my teacher, is trying to teach me something and I feel frustrated with the learning process? How do I feel when I've had successes in the classroom, and when I get to display, something that I've accomplished there? And also another piece of what you said was contribution, and I wanted to touch on that because I think there's so much to be gained from helping your children understand that the family runs because everybody's contributing, and a school runs for the same reason, right? What does it look like when they contribute?
Absolutely. And I think it's hard, going back to the piece of like, it's their space, the school space. It's hard when your child is having a panic attack or a freak out because you, the parent, are leaving them. I mean, I've seen it, especially in kindergarten.
Yeah, of course.
I deal with it for months at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
And, I've had kids where I literally have had to hold them because their mom or dad are leaving. And I'm so grateful for all the parents that have just trusted me
Right.
and have known that, like, I've got it and I will keep your child safe.
Right.
And I've had conversations with parents in the past just saying, like, I promise you, if it gets really bad or it doesn't resolve itself, you will get a phone call or you will get an email or whatever it looks like. And on the flip side, when that child comes in, almost 95% of the time, within 5-10 minutes, they've calmed down and they're good. And I've always emailed the parent to say, don't worry, your kid's good.
Yeah, it's okay.
Because I can only imagine how awful that is as a parent on the other side, just sitting there at their desk wondering if your kid is okay.
Right.
Um,
Well, I carried Kai up the West Point Grey Academy hill multiple times, over my shoulder screaming because he didn't want to go to school. And it wasn't that he didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to leave me. And it was just how we were very connected, and he wanted to stay with me. And right, he would just say it, I just want to stay with you all day long. That's all I can do, Mama. I just want to be with you all day long. And he just had a really hard time until around grade 2. He just, eventually he got over it. And in that moment, he's experiencing some sadness and some disappointment, but it's not as if that moment is going to last him all day long. He had it, he felt the sadness, he felt the disappointment, he missed me, and then he was able to collect his sweet soul and move on to learning and connecting with his friends and laughing and playing. And in some ways, I think to parents, I love to tell them it's a compliment.
yeah.
Gave such a magical experience in your home that your
Yeah.
child loves so much that it's hard for them to leave that, or a magical relationship that's hard to separate from.
What we call that, like, that's secure attachment.
Absolutely. Right.
So, I mean, you're like that, and that's not to say that a kid who doesn't freak out isn't securely attached to their caregiver, but
That's clear.
let's just be very clear.
Right.
Um, um, but and he's talking about his feelings. You can't, like, that's magical. The fact that these little people want to talk about their feelings too. And to go back to what you were asking, I think it's also really important for the parent for the families to talk about the child's day and to talk about their feelings and to express themselves. And so many times parents come to me and they say, Miss Everett, like I ask my child every single day after school, how was your day? And they never answer me. And I said, yeah, well, you can't, have you tried a different way? because
Right.
because if I were to be asked, even as a 41-year-old, how was your day?
I
I
don't
would
know.
probably go, fine.
Or I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Yeah.
So I always say, try a different practice. So what I advise my families to do is, can sitting at the dinner table or in the car or whatever, on the way to gymnastics or on the way to the pool or wherever you're doing after school, can you tell me one squishy and one prickly?
Right.
And so one squishy is like a really great moment that happened for you today, and a prickly is like a really unfortunate thing that happened, whether it was a choice that you made that didn't feel good, or a choice that somebody else made that didn't make you feel very good. And that gives them a little bit more of like a tangible thing to go on, not just like spouting off what happened in your day.
Mhm.
And on top of that, get into the routine of role modeling. So if I ask Bailey, is there anything you want to tell me about your day today at the dinner table? Her immediate response, because we've modeled it so much, is, no, mommy, I want to hear about your day first.
Oh,
And
so
so, because that's how I started it, I would always say, like, here's my squishy for the day, and here's my prickly. Okay, Bailey, what can you tell me about your squishy and your prickly? Or, Daddy, can you tell me about your squishy and your prickly? So she always wants to know about my stuff first, which is fine. I'm
it's fine,
prepared.
right? Yeah.
Totally.
Equal sharing.
Yeah. So that would be another piece that I think I would kind of want the parents to think about maybe trying.
Right. I hear this quite often in my practice too. I pick up my child from school and I ask them right away, oh my gosh, how was your day? Because they're so excited. They haven't seen them in whatever amount of time, whether it's at half day school or full day school. And they come in hot. The parents come in and they're like, tell me everything. And they want all the details, and the child says like it was fine, or I don't remember. I hear, I don't, because they
Yes.
don't always remember. And children have to process their day too. So one of the things I offer is something a little bit similar, but I'll say to them, when you see them, just tell them how nice it is to see them.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them like, it's so nice to see you.
Mm.
And then it just softens all the space. And because at the end of a work day, and really their school is equated to a work day. They've been at school all day. They've been managing their own emotions. They've been managing friendships. They've been managing learning. And then they probably don't want to come off of their work day and be like, I'm going to tell you all about it. They may not want to talk about it right away. They may just want to let it all wash over them.
Totally.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So someone, if I come in, sometimes I don't know if this happens to you, but I'll have worked all day and I'll finally get to something, social, or I'll be in a social environment, for one of my kids' activities, and someone will start asking me or kind of wanting some help in their own situation about children or families, and they'll kind of pepper me with questions, and I'll feel, of course, I'm always there to help, but sometimes I feel like, okay, I've
Yeah.
done this. It's been such a great day and I really enjoyed it, but can we talk about something completely different than what I did all day? Can we talk
Yeah.
about anything else? So, it's trying to, I guess I only share that, and that it's trying to remember what the experience is like for your child and putting yourself in their shoes.
Mhm. Which is hard when you're tired and you're probably like sleep deprived and malnourished, potentially. And you're thinking about all the other things, and you want to connect with your kid because you legitimately miss them for the day. And so the first thing that comes to your head is, how was your day?
How was your
It's a,
day?
it's a very innocent question. We
Right.
ask it of each other all the time as
All the
adults.
time.
How are you?
How are you? I know it's such a, what, I've added a word. How are you today?
Yeah.
Sometimes just adding the word today lets them be right in the moment and sort of sink into that minute. I should probably say, how are you right now in this minute, in this hot minute? But
Yeah.
it just changed the phrase if I was going to ask it or if it came out of my mouth and I forgot to say something like, it's so nice to see you. Because I would do that to a friend too when I connect. It's so nice to see you
Yeah.
versus how are you? But if
Yes.
I do slip with how are you, I try to follow it up with the word today. How are you today, right now? So much.
That's good. I like that. I like that.
It's an easier question to answer,
But
right?
it's also like it's our go-to, right? We don't even like, as adults, we don't even take the second to just like, it's so great to see you. Hug, take a deep breath.
Yes.
Now, how are you?
Oh, yeah. Now we can go to the how are you. Yes. Now that we're past that.
Now you can be real.
Yeah. Now you can let it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Human beings can be funny that way. We can be, and I always say it's good to be curious, but maybe pick your timing as to when you're curious about the things that transpired in your child's day. And I often find children are very good at reciting about their day after you've read those nighttime stories and you've tucked in and they've just finally got to that very nice resting place, and then they are sort of willing to share about their day. And it's a funny time for parents because we're often like, oh my gosh, we got you out the door in the morning. We got you to school. We got through the afternoon, evening, witching hour, all of that stuff. And now you're finally in bed. And I just want to kiss you, read you a story, kiss you, and close the door and turn the lights out. And the child all of a sudden has so much to offer. They've got like they come in hot with verbal ideas and things to share about their day. And I hear this all the time from parents. I ask them all the time, when is your child most likely to talk to you? And every time it's at night.
Yeah.
And I get it. And I think it's because they finally feel like all the pressures of the day and the routines and the, autonomy accomplishments that they're, trying to do, whether it's, cutting up part of your lunch or, brushing your own teeth or getting into your own pajamas, all of it's over. All of the hard work is over. And then they can just lay there. And now they have something they want to share.
Yeah, they're really processing everything, all the pieces.
And how they connect and interrelate. And then they've got all sorts of stories. And as the parent, it is really challenging because you are thinking, okay, I'm going to go take a minute for myself too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's really tough. Okay, on that note, can you share? I mean, you are a mom of 7-month-old twins on top of all of this too, and what you said about someone saying to you, well, if anyone can do it, you can do it. And I know I probably was one of those people because I know you and know how competent you are, and people said that to me too, because
Yeah. I'm sure
you know
I would have.
right, right. I mean, I got pregnant and I had no idea that I was having twins. And when I found out, around that 12, 13 week mark and just thinking, oh my gosh, are you sure? Like who decided that this was going to be my job, right? This is crazy. And I had self-doubts about what this was going to be like and if I could do it too. So that really resonated with me. But here you are, you're in it. And what would you say are your struggles, as a mom? Because I think so many moms feel alone. They're kind of in the thick of it. And you truly are. You are in the thick of it. So what would you say are your hardest moments?
So what I touched on, well, first of all, the postpartum hair loss is real.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I am right in the thick of it,
Okay.
which is great. It's
Or,
always
or
exciting.
the thin of it right now.
A bit.
Falling out.
No, but the feeling judged, that's a big one that I had already touched on before. That is probably my number one struggle, is that feeling judged, people thinking that because I'm an educator, because I'm passionate about education, because I read about all this stuff all the time, that I'm going to have all the tools to fix my children or to train my children or for them to behave themselves. And it's not the case. Bailey is a extremely passionate, energetic, strong-willed. She has a strong voice. And it is hard, and I feel judged all the time by those around me. And I think the hardest judgment is my family. Like, I feel like my family judges me, and they don't. Like, 100%, they do not judge me at all.
Yeah.
But I feel it, like, and that feeling is so hard to
Right.
kind of get through those moments where
Yeah, this is a funny question, and I don't know if anyone's asked you this, but do you think that because your family truly doesn't, they just want you to
no,
do what's best for you, and they're just trying to help you, and they're watching you kind of in this crazy moment of your life with a 3-year-old and a set of 7-month-old twins, and you're juggling and doing the best you can, and you've lost your connection to all of your pillars, or you're having to be really picky about where you get your
yeah,
cup filled. Do you think at times, though, because you know all of this, you judge yourself, and that feeling of
for sure,
self-judgment is
for
so.
sure. It's huge, and like, I should know how to fix this. Why am I not, she's having an epic tantrum on the floor, and I'm like, why can't I find the tool that's going to work? I have 100 of them. But like, and then you feel crappy about yourself as a parent and a person and an educator, and then, oh, I'm not valid anymore. I don't fit in anywhere. And yeah, it's a big one for me. It's a big piece of it. And then on top of that, like, I was reading an article yesterday
Mhm.
about parenting and the iceberg theory, and how, like, the an iceberg, there's stuff on the top, and then there's all the deep rooted stuff going on, and you talk about that with the child, and then but this woman talked about it with the adult and the parent, and how what your child is doing triggers all these things down below underneath the water. And it's all your childhood traumas, your own childhood stuff that happened to you, and trying not to let that impact how you then parent. So when I get triggered by Bailey, it's because of something that's happened that is triggering my, like, fear of abandonment, or my other fears, whatever they could be. Fear of abandonment is a big one for me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
uh, and then reacting, so trying not to let my childhood trauma create a reaction towards Bailey that will then potentially give her trauma, right? So it's like,
I
it's big.
know. Okay. And I think one thing that's really, I mean, I say this almost on every podcast, and I'll say it again today, is that people come to me one of two ways. They come to me and they say, I need to go through my childhood and work through what's happened so that when I do respond to my child, I know I cannot respond from that place. And it's often fear, right? There's often a fear that shows up, or multiple fears that show up through the way our children behave, and then it triggers that fear, and then we parent in a way that we're not proud of. And it's not a great feeling. So we really do what I call the work, and we unpack all of that in relation to what's currently going on. So we've got a live stream of events happening in the home, and then I ask them, well, how were you raised?
Yeah.
Talk to me about some, interactions with your parents. What was something that you'd never do again? What is something that you want to repeat? What were some pivotal moments in your life that you absolutely will never forget? And usually that question reveals where the sticky points are. And when we do that work, I really free the parent completely. Like, they can just emotionally go, oh, okay, I can breathe, find my center, and parent from there. Or they come at me and they just say, you know what, I just need more tools. I just need more tools in my toolbox. And I'm so happy to fill your toolbox and talk about different ways to approach things that will, hopefully allow for more success. And that's okay too. And maybe that's all they need for different reasons, and it's personal. And I am never going to ask someone to go into a space they don't want to go into. But the most transformational work I see in my practice is when they want to go back, visit some of those pivotal moments, and undo some of those things so that they can parent from a place of peace. And in that place, they get to be their child's witness. They get to love them and watch them grow and enjoy them without feeling like they need to control them, control their outcome. Control's huge.
Sure.
We let go of control.
Yeah. I know, it's true. And it's hard work to have to, like, when you're dealing with all this stuff of like sleep training and creating sleep schedules and managing feeding and the 3-year-old schedule and who's driving who to school and who's picking them up and who's going to pack their lunch and what are we going to have for dinner, and then you also are expected to like dig into yourself and
yeah,
and make those changes and make those realizations that are probably really hard. And it's again, it's a lot.
a lot. I know.
Saying it, but it's a lot.
Well, and I think there's a readiness that you kind of spoke to when people are they sort of get pushed often through their children being a mirror for them and what's happening for them. And when they get to that place of just like, okay, they feel like they're at their wits' end, and then I get the phone call, and that's usually where all the beautiful growth happens, because it just gets messy enough for them to say, I do want to set aside the time. It's so sticky and it's so uncomfortable, and I'm not parenting in a way that I feel good about. That's usually when I get the call, and that's okay. That I sort of think that that's where we get the most bang for our buck in terms of emotional growth, is when we just feel like we've hit a wall. We're like, I can't do this anymore. I need something to change.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's okay. I think you're right, because when you do it, you do have to bring a willingness, and you do have to make a choice to set aside time. And you're right, it's incredibly busy. So, yeah. And when that time shows up, it's really obvious. It's not a quiet knock on the door.
No, it's really not. Yeah. It's an epic tantrum.
Yeah,
followed by really unfortunate choices.
The wheels are off the bus. And everyone's like, I can't do this. And I'm like, perfect. It's okay. It's okay if you can't, but that's where it sounds silly to say, but that's sort of where all the growth happens and the magic happens, and it's sort of where I need them to be for that to happen. So, oh my gosh, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly. I think my favorite, if I go back in my mind, I mean, there's 1,000 favorite parts of this conversation, but one of my favorite parts is talking about the classroom and reminding and offering parents that's their space to learn and to grow. And I think that's a beautiful thing to offer parents, and to know that their kids will be okay in that space, and that they're loved by teachers like you, and they're cared for by teachers like you, and that's a beautiful thing to remind parents of, and to share your own personal journey of what it's like to have all the knowledge and yet and to also still struggle, and that's okay. I think people feel alone when they struggle, and part of the reason I wanted to do this was to say, you know what, no one's alone, and we can connect and support each other, because this is an amazing journey, but a hard journey.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's nice to have conversations about it. And I think, I don't know if we said this on or off the air, but it's, people say like, it's all okay over here, like, I got this. It's like, no.
Not.
Not okay. No, that's why I call it, I want to meet you behind your white picket fence. I don't want to meet you where you're telling me it's all perfect and it's all fine, because that doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel raw. And the conversations I want to have are those ones. So I can't thank you enough.
Yeah. I love talking to you about all things education and parenting and teaching. It's my
Yeah.
favorite thing to talk to you about.
I know, it's so much fun. I always say, like, I think I put on my Instagram last night, like, these conversations set my soul on fire because it's true. There's so much there. And I think we hit on a hot topic that I said we should go back to. So we could even get specific and have more of these conversations because there's a lot that we can do to support our children and give them what I often say is autonomy over control. And it's a big word for kids. And you touched on that today. And I think that there's so much there that we could talk about because as parents, we often think there's a fight for control in the home. And really what I like to offer them is to help your children become autonomous human beings. And when they do that, they can go from that platform. It's so nice. And to stop thinking about this from a position of control.
Yeah, and it's a scary thing. I mean, Bailey has her own fridge, and so many people looked at me and was like, "What? She has her own fridge, so she can just come and go and get whatever she wants?" I said, "Yeah, but I do. Like, I come and go and get my stuff. I put healthy stuff in there, and we talk about it, and we have the nutrition chart on her fridge, and we talk
Right.
about making good choices. But like, I don't know. It's scary. Like, it's a scary thing to give your child that much choice and that much kind of freedom. But you also,
Well, you're giving her autonomy, and I think we really should probably do a full podcast on this because what you're touching on is her connecting to her own hunger dial and
yeah.
saying, "Oh, my tummy feels hungry right now. This is where I can go to nourish myself."
And
And
this is what I feel like eating.
yes,
Like,
and my mom set me up for success. She hasn't put Oreos in my
no,
refrigerator. She's put healthy things in my refrigerator. So nothing against the Oreo
no.
for all Oreo lovers out there, but I'm just saying you've set her up for success.
Yeah, I'm
So,
trying to.
yeah, of course. I know. And then there's the letting go, and and then the letting go is scary. And there's all stages of letting go through parenting that we'll bump up against. And I'd say the teenage let go is probably the one that feels the hardest. But if you've practiced it along the way, right? The teenage let go is hard, and then the launch let go is hard. But if you've practiced along the way of getting children to connect to who they are, and then being able to make choices that are supportive of their own being, then it will be easier for you. And it's part of the work that you do now to make your job. Like as you said, it takes time to allow your child to get in the kitchen and cut the cucumber, and then but that time is like an investment in the bank of her growing into an autonomous human being, and that will pay tenfold down the road.
Hope
So,
so.
yeah, no, well, I'm going to sit over here and say, I know so. I'll hold the faith for you.
Okay, great.
All right, we'll wrap this up, but let's do it for sure again. And it was so great to have you on. So, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.